Let's now move on from grouping and look at versioning. You'll recall that grouping involved observing a consumer characteristics and setting different prices for each characteristic. By contrast, versioning involves setting a menu of pricing and then having consumers self-select into different groups. So how does that work? Well, grouping works when you can actually observe the willingness to pay of a group. Versioning is when you can't observe the willingness to pay, but the consumers know it, and you want to rely on that to achieve a similar outcome. Okay, so what's the theory of versioning? When does this self-selection work? Seems somewhat magical, really. Well, the first condition is that you have to have an incentive. Once again, you have to have the same thing as in grouping, a belief that different groups will have different price elasticities. Of course, the groups could be very different from the ones you might consider grouping over. Then you have to have the ability. You have to, this time, in order to encourage consumers to buy the products you intend for them, you have to design the products differently to appeal to these different groups and to exploit the things that you can't observe, but you can theorize or in actuality make those groups different. Let's consider some examples of this working. One way to version is based on quality. This is a quote from French economist Dupuy in 1849, who is talking about the railroads. It is not because of the few thousand francs which would have to be spent to put a roof over the third-class carriages or upholster the third-class seats that some company or other has open carriages or wooden benches. That sounds familiar. Our airline seats. Airline seats in coach or economy have got progressively worse over time. In fact, a recent study indicated that compared to 20 years ago, the best seats in economy today are smaller, narrower than the worst seats in economy 20 years ago. And sometimes you see designs like this. Now we know why this is occurring. This is occurring because the airlines are selling multiple products on the same airline. They don't know how much money you've got, but they reckon that if they make the basic economy seats pretty uncomfortable, the people who have the money will be willing to shell out for the more comfortable seats in economy plus, or of course in business or first class. You can sometimes version in terms of the distribution, offline versus online. A book online can cost a different amounts than the above cost than one's offline, and you can see an example here. Another way of charging is based on the intensity of usage. This is quite common in broadband charges. For instance, Rogers for some time has charged you more progressively based on how much you want to download each month. As you can see here, the prices rise depending on the commitment that you make. Of course, if you are intending to use Netflix or something like this, and that's how you use the internet, you're going to want one of these higher plans, and that's what Rogers is teasing out. Sometimes you have different sizes. You can see here different sizes, different prices for iPads, and the markups are quite a lot. It's $100 each increment, and sometimes you're getting quite a bit for each increment. What are they trying to do there? Well, they're trying to price the higher iPads with the higher quantity of high capacity so that richer people will buy them, or people who want to use their iPads more intensively. You sometimes see volume discounts or coupons. My daughter exploited this one. One for $1.50, two for $2 in order to encourage people to buy more in a charity chocolate sale. And we see sometimes DRM. Actually, this has gone a bit passé because in some cases DRM has gone passé, but Apple for a short period of time actually charged 30% more for DRM-free tracks than DRM tracks. And finally, you see some issues where companies actually version by spending money to make a product worse. There's an example here of a remote control for a DVD player. Some of the buttons are actually in all of the remote controls, and therefore part of the functionality of the player, but they've covered them up. And you can see right at the top there's a little cutout, and you can access all the advanced features by crimping the product. But it's actually more costly for Sharp to actually produce the DVD player that is worse. Versioning. Versioning can have pitfalls as well. For instance, you can create confusion. Check this one out. See what's going on there? It's an interesting sort of versioning. Strictly it's versioning, but maybe it's grouping as well. You can also have situations where arbitrage undermines versioning. For instance, what happens if you buy a large Rogers broadband plan and you forget the terms and condition and you share it with your neighbours? That's going to undermine versioning. Or similarly with your Netflix password. Unbundling can also do the same thing. Unbundling occurs where you buy a bundled product that's part of versioning, something we'll learn a little bit about later, but then you sell bits and pieces of it. For instance, one thing you can do is you can buy Lego sets, and you can take those Lego sets and sell the individual bricks, if you've got the time that is, for much more than the cost of the set itself. Coupon trading. Coupons are another form of versioning. They give price discounts to certain people who are willing to remember to use the coupon, bring it along, or change their behavior as a result of it. But sometimes these coupons can be traded. There's some even deals here in Toronto. Finally, you can get the menu wrong. Sometimes you just miss the price. Here's one example. I do like Failblog.